and nobody's fleeing. Thank you. This is continuous integration with Drupal. My name is Ryan Mott. This is Michael Smith. We both work at VML, which is a worldwide full-service marketing agency headquartered in Kansas City. Recognized this year as top 10 A-list agency in Ad Age. Whatever that means. Say that 10 times fast. And we are often listed as one of the best companies to work for in KC. Probably. Citation needed.
People who get paid. Oh,
that's great.
We got an email about that today.
All right, what is CI? There's a long history of various things called continuous integration, but here's a pretty good definition from someone who wrote the book on the subject. The earliest mentions of continuous integration were actually negative. It was talked about compared with regularly scheduled integration, and that's when all this was still a very manual process. Integration for enterprise projects took so much labor, it took so much time away from coding. It was something you avoided, sort of like a doctor's visit or a deadline for a slide deck. Automation, modern tools have enabled CI to be more successful and a recommended practice. But why exactly? Well, we want consistent, repeatable output with visibility into the process. Consistency with what? CI will encourage you, or actually require you, to write testable code, confirming that what we build is consistent with the business requirements. So you do have clear and complete business requirements, don't you? Sure, heads nodding. CI also helps us adhere to uniform code standards, which will help eliminate merge conflicts with your developer peers, as well as making code reviews easier and smoother, keeping everyone on the same page. Okay, repeatability versus consistency. Does it sound like I'm repeating myself? If consistency is about accomplishing what you set out to build, repeatability is going to ensure that the result is correct even when the rules change. So new business requirements, adopting a new framework that has its own set of coding requirements, these are possible if you remove the manual build steps, and this is critical. When you automate the product essentially builds itself from these rules that you're defining in source control. You eliminate a lot of user error. If you have an ops team normally in charge of your builds, they're going to love you for this, because if the environment breaks, it's from a code change and not a missed item on a checklist. When your build is repeatable, your deployments are reliable, and you can be confident that if it worked on a lower environment, it's going to work on the upper ones. There's still a few gotchas. You're going to have unavoidable environment differences from production if you have things like load balancing or production level APIs that you can't use in your lower environments. So another thing you get out of this is with a works anywhere approach like this, quick ramp up for new team members. So their local environment is just another development environment. So whether it's out there or down here, you're going to get them up and running. And you want to talk some about Docker at this point?
Sure. Part of our CI workflow that we work on at VML actually uses Docker. So I can get, somebody's cheering back here. So you can get a developer spun up on your site really quick. We keep all of our configuration in code. All a developer has to do is git pull, Docker compose up. They're ready to go. Everything's predictable and consistent.
Which is good. Now, if consistency and repeatability are the primary driving forces for this, the glue that holds it together is greater visibility into builds, tests, and deployments. So you want to create a feedback loop for the whole team. You're focusing on the devs, but there are good parts you can bring in for management too, like greater visibility into your issue queue. Seeing real progress being made, so getting all this feedback into a team communication tool can help with team morale. The analogy of the duck, the water is calm and all the feet are churning below the water. You can't see that there's progress being made. So if you get all your build tools to report successes and failures into something like HipChat or Slack, everyone's on the same page. You want to fail fast. catch your issues sooner than later. So as your build components succeed or fail, bubble that to the top as soon as possible. There are other ways to view visibility. Here's an example of physical visibility into the build process, because who doesn't like flashing lights? One tip though, make sure they don't make noise. I tried to explain to my CubeMate that motor whine is a feature and not a bug, because it's eyes-free build status. But he wasn't on the same project, so he didn't really want to hear that every 10 minutes or so. So if I've convinced you want to implement CI, we just turn it on and go, right? But not so fast, because there are some challenges specific to Drupal with database migration, synchronization of features, and asset deployment. So the first is database migration. You should never be afraid to blow away your environment, which is a quote by Mike here.
That's what Docker's for.
That's right. Environments should be more like cattle and not pets. You may have heard this analogy. You may have heard this analogy for files and servers, where the environments still have names. They still have names, but they're more like labels as to their function, and not, this one's name is Barney. Oh no, Barney's going down. We need to stop everything and go attend to Barney and do CPR and all that. Just throw them away and make a new one. And if we've got repeatable steps to build that, they're not snowflakes anymore. But we don't want to start with an empty database every time. We need to be a bit more clever. It's hard to debug a new design without content. Lack of good test data will leave you creating it over and over again by hand in multiple places. And maybe you finally have good content in stage, but your local environment is stale. Your local environment should not be a snowflake. Your database needs to be mobile so that push button automation is possible. Developers should be able to continue working virtually uninterrupted without thinking twice about pulling the latest database. But which database? You've got to define the single system of record. So early in the process, you might not have a production server yet, right? You've only got your initial dev build. So you're going to be putting test content in there. But as you get further up the chain, eventually production ideally is your system of record. And if you don't have any sensitive data in that, you will always at that point pull production down to any of the lower environments to do what you need to do. So early on, you'll need to be able to configure your system of record, but again, ideally at the end of this, production is it. If you're using Acquia to host and you don't have a script to manage your code pushes and your database pulls, you can use this dashboard to drag and drop, but you have to remember which direction your environments go. That's not configurable, the order of the boxes, so you have to be careful that you're moving dev. See, does dev go to QA, does QA go to stage? And then you also have to remember which way the database goes. So find your system of record and all that, and only drag from there. But later we'll automate this into a script so we don't have to look at this again. Synchronization of features is another challenge. How many of you have worked with features, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's, I mean, if you've never used them, you're really missing out on tears of joy and frustration, because especially in Drupal 7, getting a configuration out of database and into code is just what you need, and that's what features gives you. But there are a lot of challenges creating and maintaining those and using them correctly. So you'll have features that won't revert due to missing dependencies. Modules added in someone else's code but not enabled. Or maybe they were built from a bad local because you've got a stale database. How many times have you heard works on my machine? Yeah. Maybe you did just pull down a copy of the content, but because your higher environments aren't consistent, then it's not going to be any better conflicts-wise. So I think Mike has more to talk about in the challenges specific to Drupal 8.
Just more on the features. I don't know if we're using features correctly in Drupal 8, but frequently things don't work. Part of what we talk about here in a few slides is a test server to make sure before you ever merge code into your development, make sure your features actually revert and they don't break, because that happens a lot.
once you get past the challenges of feature synchronization, you've still got asset deployment to deal with. And the first rule of build artifacts is don't commit the build artifacts, even if you really want to. Commit the source and allow your build script to compile just before deployment. If you don't follow that rule, you will eventually have merge conflicts. Even if your asset source is unchanged, this will be due to configuration or version mismatch of your compiler stack. With the continuous integration build, the server has the one true version of the build tools, and it's got the source controlled configuration, so it's always consistent.
This is specific for CSS or JavaScript that you're building with Node or with Sass.
Right, if you are optimizing images, if you're compiling view templates or doing any of that with JavaScript, CSS, Sass, this will be critical to you. If not, these won't be challenges for you. But if you do host on Acquia, there's another set of challenges in that you can't just push to arbitrary locations. Acquia! There's workarounds for this. We'll get to that in a minute. So if I haven't scared you by now, we can overcome these challenges with the tools. Jira we use for issue tracking, and we integrate this into our communication stack. We could do a whole nother talk on this, so we'll kind of gloss over that. We're using Stash for source control, which adds a nice UI and some enterprise features on top of Git. It's something we can host in-house, which makes our IT people happy. Jenkins is our go-to automation server. It's free, it's well understood by our resources. There's some other options out there like TeamCity and Bamboo. Team communication, we use either HipChat or Slack. We lean towards HipChat because it supports enterprise authentication. Both have good APIs for custom integrations. Don't forget the power of the physical dork lights. All right, tool setup. To fork or not to fork? That's the forking question. I'm a fan of the forking model. Everybody gets their own private copy of the repo. They can do whatever they want with it. They can rewrite history, rebase. As long as you aren't sharing with anyone yet, you can always fix your mistake before you push up your pull request. But sometimes there are business reasons why you might not be able to use forking.
I use forks. I used to use forks in every project. Now I don't fork as much. When I was working on a project a couple of years ago, the client came back to me and said, "Hey, do you realize it's costing us money for every fork for every developer?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that." And so he told me to delete them all from GitHub. So we started namespacing our branches instead. The other issue is that forks don't work with CodeShip if you're using CodeShip as your automation server. One of our clients did use CodeShip. Forks don't work, but they will work probably within the year. The CodeShip guys have promised that. We'll see.
So
they're good guys.
There are workarounds. If you namespace your branches and respect each other's boundaries, you can get by with that. Might not be ideal. Pre-commit hooks are useful to. We're going to use that to run static analysis locally, so you can lint your code before you push it up. You'll still have an out. You can override it with like a no verify flag to Git. But the pull request builder is the final enforcer. So as soon as you submit your PR for review, the rest of your team begins to look over the changes, but Jenkins is busy rerunning those static analysis tools that you definitely didn't bypass in the previous step. And they must pass before Stash allows you to merge your code.
If your curly brace is on the wrong line, it's not getting in there.
No merge if your curly braces are off. So with Jenkins, Mike's going to talk some more about this.
What am I talking about?
We have a minimum of 4 servers typically, dev, stage, prod, and then the test server, which that's going to do your automated PR testing.
So we added the test server, which is not a public facing server, and it pulls down a copy of your production database or your system of record on every single pull request, and it runs in a linear line, so it's serial. Every pull request gets its own time. We pull down a copy of the production database to test, run all of our PHP unit tests on there, build the entire thing, so run your composer make, which runs composer update and composer installs. I probably have the order of those wrong. Revert features, and then run all the integration tests. And this all happens on a server that is an exact clone of your production, but it doesn't have a public interface, so nobody else is going to look at it. As soon as it's done, it's blown away, and the next pull request can use it. That's our fourth environment that we use.
So
you can make more of those environments if you like, but I would say a minimum of 4.
yeah, sometimes we have an additional QA environment. The client might have multiple stages that they go through with review. But another good feature to consider is an on-demand pull request builder. So for works in progress, maybe you have an issue that comes in that you can't reproduce on your local environment, even though they're supposed to be exactly the same. It's not happening. If you file a pull request and have a trigger word like test this please that you add in a comment in stash, and your pull request builder grabs your pull request, it builds it as if it were preparing to do a test for merge, but it gives you a URL you can click into to interactively test it on your own. And we found this useful for cases like that where you can't make the bug happen locally. People will commit work in progress stuff saying, I'm not going to merge this, I'm just trying to make a bug happen. So that's useful. That's the good thing about Acquia. You can spin up some of these extra environments if you have access to that. But always remember to respect the system of record. We're going to be pulling prod to each of these every time we do a pull request, every time it starts a build. And again, if you have security issues flinging prod around, then this is the perfect time to customize the database sync. So whether you're redacting, omitting, replacing anything sensitive, continuous integration is perfect for this because you'll have a sanitized database untouched by human hands, like a Krispy Kreme. Donuts. Okay. Team communications. So if you are using Slack or HipChat currently, I don't know if you have integrations, but a lot of APIs you can open up to pull into that. I recommend putting as much information as your team will tolerate in the general channel. That will be noisy, but own it, because this is like the pulse of your project, right? You want to be able to pull up this channel and see sort of the heartbeat of what's going on with your team. And you also want people who may not be added to a pull request. So if front-end dev submits a PR and attaches other front-end devs to it, maybe somebody that's currently on the back end that knows a little bit about front end, that is slightly more technical about something, would know, hey, I know how to fix that. If it's siloed only in that issue and there's no other visibility into it, you might spin your wheels longer than they're necessary. But if you've got someone idle who's got the general channel open and they see that go by, they can hop in there and try to work it out. So you're not going to have many one-on-one conversations that start there. If it takes more than a few sentences in the general channel, you'll probably start a topic channel to get deeper into it. Or just carry out the whole conversation actually in the pull request review, because those are being copied back to your team chat. So whichever direction you're coming, you kind of got it coming from both angles. Try to limit private messages. Encourage your team to start their questions out in the open, even if it's directed at someone. So with a mention that team member to talk to them. Because again, on this project, there may be other people that can help work through your issue. The one-on-one direct messages are sort of silos. I mean, if it really isn't something private or personal, try to get it out there in a topic channel so that other people can contribute. Got a question? Which is that?
Private messaging.
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
If you did it, just use email.
Yeah, I mean, there's always something else.
Messaging.
Direct messages are useful. I know one thing that Slack does, I haven't seen in HipChat, is they'll email the team owner once a week and show the percentages of direct messages versus general messages. So you can get a feeling from your team of where they're going. So if you see that lean all the way to one-on-one messages, you've probably gone too far with your general channel, and try to rein it back in and make it a little less noisy. There ought to be a plugin for HipChat for that same thing, I'd hope. So let's look at the script.
And one more thing, did you have a slide or anything that showed kind of our Slack channel?
We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, if you don't see that, if you haven't done the whole chat ops kind of thing, have Ryan show you the Slack channel we used in a recent project, and you'll kind of get an idea of how all this stuff works. And if you've never done it, it's really eye-opening how like amazingly productive we can be using something like that. I'm not sure how much of the client. Yeah, there you go.
So there's a preview. All the different things that we're doing on the left and how they map to a single channel in HipChat. So where you would log in, this is status updates in Jenkins. This is browser testing, browser stack that's kicking off automated tests, comments in Stash, new pull requests, approvals, Drush, automated status. So all this consolidated into a single stream. And you can scroll back through history to see sort of how it went down. It's also handy to go back in there, and you notice the bottom, there's a, where it says deployed to test 2, and it's a link directly to the environment. We use basic auth on our lower environments, and we embed it in that link. So there's no more, okay, what's the password to get it in this site? More than once I've pulled up Slack, scrolled back just to click on that link so I don't have to remember the guest password anymore.
Yeah, and you have links, right? You have links to all of the pull requests that people are working on, so you can see if things failed, and then you can go in and see if you can help figure it out. You have links into the Jira tickets that created those pull requests and all that kind of.
And some of this,
right in the chat or the Slack channel.
and some of this is a little noisy. Like most people don't care about every single hash, and certainly not the full hash every time. The plugin we use for this integration isn't the most configurable. So what I actually did, I have a server process that will listen on the same port and act as a proxy to HipChat, and it checks the message type and it filters out all the garbage we don't want, cleans it up quite a bit. Now figure out which slide I was on. Oh, script.
There you go, Carl.
Man,
Sorry.
it's all right.
Well, I'm a consumer of all the stuff that they've built, and it's made the whole development team and my job like a million times easier. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was at a place that used this well, and just the convenience of, hey, can somebody please, approve this,
Right.
review this,
Yeah.
and golly, that saved 4 or 6 hours in getting around to noticing it. Or if I knew I was going to have 15 minutes where I was waiting for an answer from somebody else, I could go into Stash and I could review the code and say no.
Right.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it's gotten to where I have no emails from Stash that aren't filtered out of my inbox because I completely rely on the team chat to see that, or to just log in every once in a while and check what's there. We're doing on time. Pretty good. Yeah, we're going fast. So this script will change depending on your environment, but this is sort of a high-level view of what happens when you initiate a build. It's going to check out the code, run static analysis, compile the assets if that's applicable, deploy it to the environment, and then run integration tests, so automated browser testing, and then report on the result to whatever channels you have. So let's look a little closer at the testing part, static analysis and integration tests. Quick rundown of the frameworks we use, and Mike will go into a little more detail.
Sure. So for unit testing, we've started using PHP unit. I have anyway, since we're using Drupal 8, and Drupal 8 has PHP unit and great integration everywhere. You can mock services. All of your custom code should be unit tested, and if you can't unit test your custom code, then you're not writing it right. So if your developers say, well, it's too hard, they have to fix the way they write stuff. And it's better because they're writing more decoupled code. The second bit of testing we do here is integration testing. And I know the Drupal community is a fan of Behat, and we've used Behat before. We've started using Codeception, though. It's very Behat-like, except we don't have to write in Gherkin. We get to write in PHP, which to us, since we're developers, is a lot easier. It still looks a lot like your Behat test, so it's the same thing, except you're going to do I, C, open parenthesis, whatever I want to see, close parenthesis, right? So it's like Gherkin. There should be integration tests for every one of your features. So every feature, acceptance criteria for your feature should have at least one integration test written on it. And the integration tests are taking the place of your QA people. We still need QA people, but these should be written so their job is easy. We've caught all the easy bugs. They just get to go find the hard ones.
Well, yeah, what you want is that QA is spending their time finding new bugs, and when they submit you a bug in your issue queue, that you take the steps to reproduce and write an integration test for that, so that they don't have to keep finding that same bug. You want your script to find that bug from now on. We're not going to fire our QA people. We want to free them up to find the things that we don't already know about.
They should never find happy path bugs. But yeah, if you ever get a bug, write a test for it. I mean, if you ever get a bug, you're going to get a lot of bugs. That's what happens with software, right? Write a test for it, and then you know you squashed it, and you don't have to worry about it again. Cool. The next thing we do is some static analysis. We use PHP CS. It's a PHP code sniffer. You guys were in that last talk there. They talked about it. It's a really great static analysis tool. If you're using PHP Storm, you can set it up there so that it automatically tests whenever you save. If you use Emacs, you can set it up to automatically test there as well. We actually use a pre-commit hook, so you cannot commit code that does not pass the code sniffer, which sounds like, oh my God, that's terrible, right? But if git commit yells at you every time you type it, after 3 days, you're going to start writing code in the correct code style, and it doesn't have to do much anymore. It's awesome. You can bypass that. You pass -- no verify, but then the pull request, whenever it's built, is going to, again, catch it and say, nope, you failed the code sniffer. So all of our code goes through this CS. It's not going to prevent bugs or anything, but it makes debugging a lot easier when everybody's using the exact same code style. And then, of course, we use ESLint. That's Drupal 8 is using ESLint. I think Drupal 7 used a different one. I don't remember what it's called, but I've been doing Drupal 8 a lot. Both PHP CS and ESLint, they both have Drupal standards, so use the Drupal standards. If you don't like having your curly braces on the same line as your if, change. We're Drupal developers. You got to drink the Kool-Aid. That's what we use for static analysis. We've also experimented recently with using SonarQube as part of our build process. Is anybody familiar with that one? It's a Java program that runs on our build servers. So on a pull request, it'll look for code smells more than code sniffer looks for syntax errors. It looks more for code smells. It's pretty cool. We've just started using it. A lot of our other technology at VML that's not Drupal have been using it for a while, so we're learning about it.
You know, there's something that PHP Storm does when it comes to smelly code, because I found that in the preferences when I was testing out my speech, and they're asked, what is the smelly code thing? I have no clue.
Does everybody know what code smells are? Okay, code smells are when something's just not right. It smells. We can use static analyzers to go through your code and say, wait a minute, you've nested 3 for loops here. That's probably not a good thing, right? Or you've got 6 ifs nested, or you've returned from a function 8 times. Probably something's going to break. That's just from us as developers knowing that's bad practices. So, I'm sorry?
DB query inside of a loop.
There you go. I don't know if any of our code smell sniffers will find that one, but that's a bad one. The for each loops are the ones that we see a lot, or whiles that never break. You see those things, and computers are really good at finding that. So that's what our static analyzers do, and that's what code smells are.
So looking back at our script again, let's go a little deeper into compiling assets. So on our projects, we're using NPM and friends. We've got some gulp, browserify, ES6 transpilation with Babel going on, compiling Vue templates for Vue.js. And I think we do some static image optimization too, but all this needs to go somewhere. All the optimization happens according to the rules that we set up and put in source control, so that anytime we build it, it's going to happen the same. And we output these files to site's default files, typically, so that we can sync it outside of the repo. So Acquia will let us rsync files there. So where you would normally, if you're editing a theme that has SAS files, it wants to make a dist folder inside of your theme and put everything there. By changing that default configuration to point outside of that and back into your files folder, you can get that up to Acquia and sort of work around this. Initially, we were doing some crazy gymnastics of not committing build artifacts locally, but having Jenkins commit them to a separate repo. So we had our clean repo that everyone worked on, that we didn't have any merge conflicts with. And then we had the dirty repo that got forced pushed every time, just so we had a tag that can be deployed to Acquia that contains all of our build artifacts in it. Which is okay if you're worried that someday you won't be able to recompile the artifacts the same way. But let's hope that's not the case. So finally, we're going to deploy to the environment with the script. And here's sort of the rundown on how that works to Acquia. We tag and deploy, sync the files, pull the database from the system of record, run any database updates, revert features, clear caches, and purge varnish. And all that happens without doing any of that. So that has been replaced with a parameterized PHP script that lives in source control.
Is the order of your previous list the order you use?
Yeah, if you look here, we're going from. Do you have a laser pointer? Yeah, so the red is code, right? So it's going from.
I mean, on the slide before this one.
Slide before that one? Yeah, this is approximately what is in that script. It's simplified a bit.
It was like 15 steps in your script, I think.
It's just some
Yeah.
deployment.
But yeah,
So if you look closer there, we go into maintenance mode, we move the tag, copy the files, the database. In this case, we're doing some registry repair, just to be sure. So it's doing this every time. Clears cache. We've got one here it's forcefully reverting features. It's doing a menu rebuild and flushing image cache. By the end of, as we get closer to production, we're no longer purging the image style cache every time. And at some point even, you're not clearing all the caches or even that many times. Some of this is sort of cargo culty, the clear cache again, clear cache one more time. It's like, it's always worked this way.
Just have to do that.
Clear the cache. It doesn't work, clear the cache again.
That's how my scripts run.
Yeah.
Remember, these scripts are always in constant evolution too. We're constantly trying to make them better and find new ways to do these things.
The great thing about having it in source control, when you decide you no longer need a step, you take it out and it propagates through your environments.
Crazy talk.
Everything's in source.
Another thing you can do, another part of our script that's using Acquia cloud hooks, which are the equivalent of the post commit hook, but here's one that's the post code deploy. We're using this one to find what get tag was deployed and write that to a text file that we can include in the footer. So when the client tells us the menu is broke, they're seeing something weird, we can ask them, well, which version is it? And they can look in the footer on their dev site and give us a build number. So the client themselves have no visibility into Jenkins. They don't know what a Jenkins is. They might not even be in our ticketing system. But we can map all this back and be able to reproduce it by redeploying that old tag to one of our dev environments so we can get back to the root of the problem. And that's nearing the end of the slide. So looking again at how we've mapped sort of all these different places to get status and pushing it into team chat so you have one consistent flow, getting that visibility into the automation that you've set up. Yeah. Wow. That went a lot faster than I thought it would.
Always does.
It's all right. Have any questions? Yeah.
We haven't put browser stack into the process yet. How do you detect a failure on browser stack?
So Browser Stack we have that integrated into HipChat by Jenkins, I guess. So Jenkins fires off to Browser Stack. We actually have multiple Jenkins jobs. So we've got one that does the building, that pipelines to another Jenkins job that pushes to Acquia, that pipelines to another job that actually integrates with Browser Stack and does the testing. So the pass or fail result of that, Jenkins will report back to our HipChat channel. And I don't have a screenshot. In Jenkins, you can configure XUnit reporting and have a graph of successes and failures over time. So there's a way to get PHP unit, XUnit formatted reporting back from the plugin that calls Browser Stack. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for each of the tests in
Codeception.
we're using Codeception to manage that.
Bless you.
So that's the thing that's reporting success or failure.
And browser stack, what constitutes a failure?
Browser Stack is, it's pretty dumb. It's a Selenium client, right? So it's not headless because you can actually see the output of it in a screen capture. But it's all dependent on how you define the test in using Codeception or Behat.
Oh, so you're using it like in place of like the way most people say run Firefox on the CI box that's running Jenkins. You don't do that. You use
Right.
Stack.
Right. So rather than doing a headless browser on Jenkins itself, we are deploying to an environment at Acquia that is just for this. So Browser Stack is pulling up that URL at Acquia to do all of its cross-browser testing. And that way, we've got a wider range of browsers we can test without having all that set up in Jenkins.
When you fail, you have a URL to click on rather than it failed, go reproduce it somewhere else.
You
Yeah.
get pictures too.
Yeah, so Browser Stack will record a video of the whole process, so you can see it pulling up the menu and clicking here and going there, and you can kind of get a sense of that when it failed. It takes snapshots at each step too, and that's all configurable, what level of detail that goes to. At that point, if it's not quite enough, you can run that test again locally, and using a browser automation that you can pause, so stop in the middle of it, interact with it.
Most of our integration tests are run headless, though. We don't actually use Browser Stack or Selenium for most of them because it's just slower.
Just me.
No, I mean, the only time we ever really care about using a browser, is if we're testing JavaScript. I don't know what we're using whenever it's headless. Codeception, I say, Firefox headless, and it does it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Mink, but it's faster not to use Browser Stack unless you need it. So only use it when you're testing JavaScript, really.
Right.
Yeah, in this case, the sample project here was Vue.js on top of Drupal.
A lot of it's
so
Browser Stack.
a lot of heavy front-end stuff to test.
Vue.js is cool.
Which you can learn tomorrow.
Right. This
Plug
time
it in.
tomorrow, go see Carl's talk on Vue.js. You'll see why you need browser stuff. No.
Yes.
Have you guys ever tried to use Travis?
I've used Travis on personal projects. I've never used one with VML because it's a cloud-hosted service, and most of our clients are not cool with using cloud-hosted services. One exception is we used CodeShip because the client didn't want to use it, so it's kind of the same.
Yeah, we use
Configuration is the same.
That's cloud instead of Jenkins.
I talked with someone at DrupalCorn this year that had set up a whole bunch of this continuous integration things, and they said if you're doing it on-premise, Jenkins is the right tool, and she really liked Travis CI if you can use a hosted service.
I like Travis.
It worked well with Drupal.
I think Travis only integrates with Git, though, right? GitHub,
Yeah.
right? Which most of ours is not on GitHub.
Yeah, if it fit within the sweet spot for Travis, then it's
That's great.
a great tool. Otherwise, if you use Jenkins, was essentially the direction I got.
With Travis, you can get Docker as well. Works well.
Doesn't Travis use? I thought Travis used Docker.
That's what I'm saying. It works well. You can do it both ways with Travis. Old Travis did not use Docker. New Travis does. And you lose out on some things when you get Docker in the new Travis, such as you don't have sudo access. So installing things from apt-get doesn't work so well.
Well, I thought
Last
you
time I
could-
looked at it anyway.
No, well, I thought you can tell Travis to run with sudo and it should use the old way.
Then it uses the old way. It doesn't use Docker, right? So do you want the niceties of Docker or do you need sudo? It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I was gonna say, why do you guys choose to use the general channel instead of just creating like a CI channel?
Okay, I hate the general channel because when you guys get a phone message, you get 19 emails. Do you have to click that red button to make it go away? I have that problem on the general channel, so I have to scroll back and read every one of those pull requests. So I hate it on the general channel.
I got some pushback at first on this. If you can imagine.
I don't do it. He does.
His boss screen bloody murder.
Yeah, and like I said, that's an old screenshot that shows a high level of noise with all the refs in there and everything. So there's like a sweet spot, and you have to start big and sort of. So if you overdo it at first, obviously everybody's going to complain, but then you have room to shrink it back and compromise, right? If you start off with a trickle and you keep trying to add things, people are going to complain. No matter what you do.
On my projects, they're not in the general channel. They're in a specific build channel.
Yeah.
And
And then do you ever visit the build channel?
Yeah, it's right here.
Does anyone else on the team visit the build channel?
Yes. Everyone else talks there. I don't.
I visit it all the time because I want to use the links to go check
Right,
out stuff
yeah.
on GitHub.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a carrot and stick
Yeah,
aspect
here,
out of it.
Slack, same thing.
And you
Except
really have
that's
to
code
go
shit.
based on what your team agrees to. I mean, if everyone will use it and keep it another channel, keep going back to
I
it.
like to separate it from the project managers because they don't know what the fuck's going on half the time anyways.
Yeah.
So
Kind of nice for the project managers to see it though, because they know that there's activity going
well,
on.
they're still like included, but one thing that I always loved on when you do like a PR and you're putting in like your statement, you can specifically target a person.
Right.
You used to say, hey, this person, please do it because we have the problem where I use the same username for GitHub, for Stash, or for like everything. So anytime that I do a commit, like it will ping me.
Right.
But one of my our tech lead, he's got a different thing. So I always make sure that if he needs to do a PR merge or something, that I explicitly put it in there so that Slack will ping him. Which was funny because he made a redirect from GitHub or from his Gmail to automatically forward it to his work email, so he ended up getting like 4 times as many emails on his phone, and then did the same complaint as you did. He's like, what, 25?
You gotta
We
find
have
out.
had users, find that out and leverage it. Stash is sort of obnoxious in how you add reviewers to a pull request. You can't just paste in a list of names, and you have to use their autocomplete. So you type K, wait to click on Carl, type P, wait to click on Patrick. So some of our, ingenuitive or lazy developers have stopped assigning people to their pull request, and in the comments they just put @here. So when that shows up in your general channel, it pings anyone who's in the general channel. Anybody who's online, it pops up an alert. They're like, there's a pull request to review.
with Stash.
So you could do the same in a dedicated channel. I think you can even add emoticons and things. Yeah, you can definitely leverage the comments in the pull request to get into your team chat to do different things. I haven't got it to trigger the Giphy yet, though. Still working on that.
As soon as my tech lead told me that he started forwarding all of his emails from Gmail, I immediately tagged him inside the pull request. Just because I wanted like every single one of them. Like I was setting up the environment, so he got every single one of them.
Ouch.
And he turned his phone off because we were doing North by Midwest, so he did part of the hackathon. He created something, so he had to be there the whole day. So I just started tagging him on everything. He turned his phone back on.
It seems to be the opposite of what we're working on. We try to get people in, not
Get
make
people
them
to
turn
use
their
it.
phones off.
His balance is a little off.
That's all right.
Well, I was getting a lot of work done that day, so my point was, why are you upstairs sitting around just chilling with people and you down here doing some work with me? So I just made sure that he had like 50 million messages by the time he got done with his day.
Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you deal with like keeping your local dev machine up to date?
Right.
What's your best practice?
So we don't have many local automation scripts, except for, yeah, developers will tend to write their own thing. My automation is command line history. Control R drop pulls up the shell line that does a bunch of drush commands in sequence. There's room for improvement there. Yeah, no, so still I do, yeah, drush, drop, drush, pull the database, sync the files, do all the things.
So on ours, we actually don't work together very often, but we still do all this continuous integration together. On ours, we have it set up where it just uses a make file. You know, it's very old school. So we just drop everything in a make file, and when a developer needs to update, you can just type make, and it does everything for them. Just, you know, pulls the database, runs my update DB, runs my feature reverts, etc. With Docker, don't be afraid to blow it away. Every day, I restart all my Docker stuff. So I'm on a completely fresh database and a fresh system every day. Unless I have something that I was working on from the night before, I can't lose my database. But
So does that mean the time to make the pot of coffee, or?
Docker's actually really quick. The first time you download it, it's a little slow, so make sure you're plugged in. If you live in Kansas City, you get Google Fiber.
Yes.
Okay, there's that.
But after you download it the first time, it's cached. And then in your Docker scripts, if you change something below where it goes and downloads everything, it doesn't have to go re-download it. If you change something above where it downloads everything, it has to re-download it. So it goes pretty quick. It does not take long at all.
And the process that Ryan uses, I use the same thing, so it only takes a few minutes. And the key there, there's like 6 or 8 drush commands essentially is how it works. The drop your database, pull your prod database, reverse your features, blah, blah, blah. The key to making that work really well is that dev servers always synced automatically by our automated process, so all developers have access to development, not production, but they know that they have a sanitized development database that they can just pull any time it's dropped. Right. So by automating your development, staging, and production deployments, you're actually making the job of your developers easier. Because like Brian's famous for the last time you sync production. Like it doesn't take any effort anymore. It's like you just sync dev and you have the production database and a clean sanitized version. This is like if you haven't synced your database in the last 10 minutes and you're asking me a question, the answer is go sync your database. Right? Every single time.
Can't tell you how many times I've blown
It is. Mandatory dirty shell command.
We really ought to write like a drush plugin for it, honestly, because as much as we rely on drush already.
Or you can just use Drupal console and create a
So,
pipeline.
like,
What do they call
we're all PHP or Python, but like for historically we've been using Ruby things like we started with Capistrano, that was way too much. Then we used Flat deployer, which was minimal and just a receiver. Like that was still too much. So now we just have our own rate, tasks, and it's mostly wrapped around Drush commands. But like you do rate dash capital T and it lists all the commands there, so it's a little bit easier. But
Yeah.
looking at maybe Answer was something. I think what flow is, but just something that maps the list of drush commands, or even if it's just drush commands that's in certain sections,
Right.
so that people know which ones they should use.
And that's what I mean, this is really just a wrapper around drush commands. It happens to be written in PHP. It really probably could have been a shell script by the end of it because it's calling out to shell so often to do all the things it does. But it was easy enough to put it in our code base.
But giving us the same thing access to people don't really sort of the next step.
Right. And really, we ought to be able to.
drush commands, string.
We should be able to extend this to local. And I've used it that way. I was actually, when I first wrote it, I was using it locally. It's just not quite bulletproof enough, I feel like, for the different local environments we have.
And so if we're using Docker, we're using virtual machines, which are automatically provisioning. You run the Jenkins job on your local machine.
I know with one of the Hisense site that we have, anytime that they do a new branch, a new feature branch, they completely blow away the dev environment and rebuild it. So that they're making sure that they're synchronizing everything as they need to.
Good idea.
As part of their build, as part of their automated build process.
Yeah, as much as you can start clean every time, that just eliminates variables, things that might go sideways.
All those extra fields you created you don't really need. It won't pick up in features if you're constantly blowing it away.
When the super
And if you-
people store a variable that you can't get rid of.
If you've been doing an import script, a lot of inserts and deletes and inserts and deletes, and things are just going weird, ask the developer if they've restarted MySQL recently or their computer. I think I had a developer that had an uptime of 30 days.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Doing
have no problem
gigabytes
with
of
that.
MySQL imports over and over. All the things, all the steps he went through to troubleshoot, and I'm like, please, just humor me. Restart. Yeah, it works now. I knew it would,
You should never fix your system that way.
but it does. But it does.
It does. Well, developers are pretty good at jacking up their dev.
That's true.
It's our
Nobody
job.
else will do it.
That is for devastating
Yeah.
to codes that were very destructive.
Well, I've tried using Bolt, and Bolt just started having issues where I'm gonna have to blow it away anyways and start over. Because I don't know, like, where in the step, like, Travis started failing and where, like, our build started failing. Because I know they broke stuff on Bolt, but I know we also at the same time integrated, like, configuration management and set up, we're setting all that up, so I'm not entirely
Change
sure
too
where
many
to go.
things at once.
Yeah, so too many things at once, just wipe clean, just start all over again and try to make sure that you can duplicate it.
So another good point is that the way we have this set up, every pull request or every merge of a pull request gets a new tag. So we have a lot of tags. That's why they're time-based. It's a date dash and then the incrementing Jenkins build number. So you kind of have an idea of when in time it happened, or you can just go by the Jenkins build. But that way, any merge that passed all its tests is a candidate to go to any of the higher environments just by dropping the tag in there.
Do you number your builds based off the number of builds in a day, or
Jenkins has a build number that increments, just a sequential integer, and then we append that to the date. So year, month, day, dash, Jenkins build number. So that last number is always incrementing the Jenkins, and then it's based on date. Just helps you as a human kind of figure out where in time that was.
we basically we reset our build counter based off every day, so you can say in this day how many times did this get built, how many times, like how productive were you, and then I can't remember where my colleague got that from, but he saw that was like kind of like a standard that you use when it comes to automated build processes, that you want to make sure that you're not just incrementing to figure out total number of builds where you get to like millions by the time you're done with the project, but
The nature of projects at VML is such that we should never get to millions before they've gone to another agency, right? Agency life.
VML's bad.
Yeah, no, it's just nobody keeps an
Clients.
agency forever. So if you like working on many different projects,
They don't keep the same project forever
One of
either.
the things that I remember, or I thought of as we were talking about the build increments and the tags that always get deployed, like Brian was saying, is that every single build that ever happens in Jenkins always gets its own unique tag, and every build can be promoted to any other environment, and every build is also published into a Slack channel. So all of our release management is handled by what we call a consulting analyst or business analyst. And the guy that is managing the client and the QA schedule and the UAT, all that, he's the guy that actually goes into Jenkins to do the same deployment into our upper level environment. It's not even a developer that has to do that. We didn't have like QA folks being able to do their own deployments, and we just tell them, like, well, we think this PR is good, they'll go deploy it in QA, and if they pass it, they just deploy it out to UAT and let the client know. And the developer can just keep working on their work, and it keeps them isolated from all of this busy work, essentially, from our perspective, right? And we can offload that onto someone who's actually managing the process. They can do it themselves, rather than having a developer and a business analyst doing essentially the same thing. So as much as you can automate it, and then you can hand off that work to the other folks that are actually managing the process, is a huge.
I love fielding the request. Can you build that tag to this environment with, here's the link for you to do it from now on.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
If that doesn't work, call me back and I'll walk you through it.
Let me Jenkins that for you.
Yes, exactly. Let me Jenkins that for you.
That's a good one.
I'm going to add that slide.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you have any more questions, here's our email. We should have links to this. This will be posted
Somewhere.
Yeah. Go see Carl's talk tomorrow. Jacob's talk tomorrow. He has animated GIFs.
You
in
should
his
go
talk.
see him.
And Cass McGowan sitting here has a talk on Docker now too.
There you go.
Docker.
And
Ride the whale.
Yes.
Right, well, she's all very good student.
go talk to the sponsors. Thank you.
Thank you.
I missed that talk at TC Drupal.